Hello, everyone. I am your host, Chris Marchack, and welcome to our Clinical Chats, episode 55, where we hope to enlighten, entertain, and educate you on all topics in the field of dentistry. Please be aware that we are unable to see or hear you, but we encourage your participation and are happy to address any questions you may have. Simply click on the Q&A button located on the right-hand side of the screen. We will make every effort to answer them during the webinar. Rather than having a designated Q&A time, we aim to integrate your questions and comments throughout the session to maintain an engaging and interactive experience. Please feel free to submit your questions whenever they arise. The CE credit will be sent to the email address you provided within 48 hours, and this session will be accessible on demand in the coming days. Now, on with our program. For those of you who have joined us before, you will all know my two dear friends and co-hosts, Dr. Frank Vidjak, prosthontist in Beverly Hills, and Dr. Brian Goodacre, prosthontist in Upland, California, and also the Director of Clinical Technologies for Noble Biocare. Brian, Frank, hey guys, great to see you both.
How's it
going?
Fantastic. Hey, you may remember on episode 50, which was October 11th, we had an incredible episode on zirconia fractures. In particular, implant framework fractures. We had such a response and so many registrations for that program and so many questions. I wanted to chat it up again. And so a few weeks ago, we had our Invista Summit, and I spoke about complications on the fully dentures patient, and this topic was remarkable, interesting with this as well. So that is why I brought it up again. So with that being said, what I want to talk about tonight is what is the cause and how do we really prevent these types of fractures? Tonight, I want to chat about prevention, occlusion, maybe we're throwing a little bit about mandibular fracture, but most importantly, if it breaks, who pays for it? I want to hear your policy, Brian and Frank. What do you guys do? Because it happens. And not just with something so big, but maybe something small too. Ruby, maybe we can start our poll first, because I want to know, in a full arch implant prosthesis, what is your preference in restorative materials? Is it monolithic zirconia prostheses? Is it a zirconia framework with a layered veneered porcelain? Is it a metal ceramic prosthesis? I'm going to put 4 as another type of prostheses, and then 5, forget it, porcelain. I'd rather do a metal and resin prosthesis. While we're waiting for that poll, Brian, Frank, as I've asked this poll to our audience, I would like to take a poll between the three of us. Frank, what is your preference in restorative materials and why?
Actually, it's between 2 for me currently, and it would be a monolithic restoration or one that has a metallic substructure with a zirconia superstructure. And we'll get into that conversation later, but that's kind of my tweak on things.
And how about you, Brian?
So, I agree. It's definitely going to be a monolithic material. Primarily zirconia is what I do, but there are indications when I like to have a substructure to support the zirconia. And again, it's a good point, though. I think we'll talk some more about.
So may
how about you, Chris?
One, 'cause My preference is a monolithic zirconia.
Yep.
I've done all the different ways, initial crowns, metal frameworks, veneering porcelain, and I've done quite a few metal and resin prostheses. But let me ask you this. I'm going to be so blunt. Have any of you ever had one fracture or things break?
I'll say from the metal acrylic, I've had, definitely have had the acrylic part either wear or chip. From zirconia, I'm going to say I have not had one break yet. And the key word is yet, because I haven't been doing it probably long enough. So I'm sure I will, but I haven't yet personally, but it's just a matter of time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think I'll make a subcategory. And again, it's kind of like when you talk about survivability of implants versus, you get into that little gray zone. It depends on it. Have I had complications? Yes. Has it been catastrophic that required a replacement? Not yet.
So I'm the only one in this group here that has had any fractures.
Oh, no.
You guys made me feel bad.
I'll qualify that. Okay, I'll qualify it. But I think it was more. I believe it was more the patient's biology than the system itself, because I had a catastrophic framework break, which one of these days, if you're interested, we can talk about it. But it was in the days of gold frameworks, cast two, components and all that. A very thick metal framework.
Yeah, porosity.
And yet the patient managed to break it right through one of the screw channels and into the implant. And I had posterior support. It was maxilla. The only way that could happen is literally when you looked at how the implants themselves failed, and then it ultimately, this patient lived far away, halfway around the world. And I truly believe it's one of those, I don't know what number statistically anybody could see this. I truly believe I couldn't see another situation like this if I lived another 2 lifetimes. But catastrophically hammered the implants into the maxilla, because the mandible had no problem ever. But I believe it has something to do with bone density, the forces that he could generate. And because there's no other way, you have to have it drive in to break it like that. And I could just see it fatiguing slowly, losing that posterior support, because he took out multiple implants. It just wasn't one on both sides. It was a unique situation. So yeah, I have had one like that.
I'd love to hear from our audience as well. Any of you, I'm very open. You've heard it from the 3 of us. Have there been fractures with you guys? Because look at the poll here. The vast majority, 57%, monolithic zirconia.
Yeah,
and there are different ways with the monolithic. Yeah. Any thoughts about that?
No, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, zirconia of some type, but monolithic, I can imagine it's more straightforward for more people, truly. I mean, when you talk about the bar and then you expect something to be on top of it, so now you have 2 fits that are important, one to the implant, another one to a bar. It's more, to me, it just looks on face more straightforward.
So as we look at this, because the vast majority is doing it all in porcelain here, what about prevention? What's the key about prevention for you guys? Is it occlusion? Is it how it's fabricated? What is your thoughts about what do we need to do about preventing these types of fractures, whether it's a full arch, quarter arch, multiple teeth. Brian, what's your thoughts?
I mean, for me, what I find is one of the challenges. Occlusion plays a big role, but then it's also the follow-up, because I think a lot of times there's the idea that, okay, the day I put this in the mouth and I dial it in, you think it's going to be like that for the rest of the life. And you sometimes will see a patient for recalls, of course. There's always the patients that you don't see as frequently as you want. But if you don't check that can significantly change, especially as things wear down over time. And so I think that plays a big role of not only the day you put it in and adjusting things, but it's also protecting it with occlusal guards, again, if the patients wear them. And then 2, at your follow-up exams, following up and making sure the occlusion hasn't changed or things haven't shifted, because it happens. It's just whether or not you see it or catch it. Because a lot of the times when you have those surprises, whatever the case may be, sometimes it's on those patients that you only see when there is a problem. And that's always a bit nerve-wracking too, because they only come in when there's a problem. They won't come for recalls, but they will when there's a problem.
I know. Before we were talking earlier before we came on the air here. I think the audience has realized that we're all three of us are car guys. Frank, you bring up a really good point of how you kind of put these prostheses in. Maybe you want to explain what you're talking about, because how you screw these prostheses in just to even check about fit is one. I'd love to hear your comment. Well, how do you check fit with these frameworks? And 2, how do you insert these prostheses? Because do you just go in around the corner and just start screwing them all in, or do you start from the center then going back? Or there's so many different ways of doing it, but why and how? Because I think that also is about prevention as well. What's your thought about that, Frank, what we were talking about?
Well, to just bring a little levity to all this, at that moment, I pretend that patient is a car engine, whatever, some form of internal combustion. I haven't worked on any turbines yet, but just your typical piston-powered, motorized contraption. They turn into that at that moment. I don't know how I got that engine into the chair, but there it is. Okay.
Good thing it's not a Boeing.
Well, poor Boeing. They actually have great designs and great products, but when it's like us, we're so dependent on support. Okay, and that's going to be part of our chat. Yeah. It's the support, because just bouncing back, because you're asking about tightening patterns and all that. Yes. Because it comes down to 3 things for me when you're talking about potential sources of complications. It's 1, what's the quality of the impression? Okay, it doesn't matter to me whether it's analog or digital. It's how did you capture that implant position? Number 2 is the laboratory. There's so many errors that can happen, both in design and with monolithic zirconia. There's a sintering process. So there's technical aspects of it. And number 3, for me, it's whether there's planned to be a cantilever or not. So when we talk about other stuff later, if that comes up again, just remind me. But the tightening pattern is because it's well proven in industry, and you'll see it in all assembly processes of these, whether it's for cars or aircraft. In aerospace, they have a method to that process. There's a reason why they don't go in a circular pattern and tighten everything down sequentially. Okay, there's a pattern in which things are tightened to try to distribute, and because there's going to be fit modifications. If you changed even a tire on your car, you'll notice you put a couple of lug nuts in there and all of a sudden you'll see the wheel shift. That's why they put a little bevel inside. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you can feel when you start, and you don't tighten it all at once, right?
Yes.
You first get it snug, and then in a star pattern, and then you start putting more pressure until you feel everything bottom out. So in my tightening pattern, I think is very similar to what you'll do. I'll fixate something in the anterior. I'll get a starting point. I'll just lightly tighten it. Mm-hmm. Then I jump to the rear. Okay. Then I jump to the other rear. Then I'll go from, let's say if it was, I first put it in anterior. Let's say I go to the right posterior, most posterior area. Then I'll go to the left most posterior area. Now I have 3 zones. Then I jump to the corresponding remaining ones. So I'll crisscross. And that's just with a finger tight. Now you're going to ask, well, how do you check the fit and all that? Well, Chris, I'm going to say this again, like in other chats. We've been around long enough where we heard about you feel it with your fingers until the screw first makes contact, right, with that platform inside. And then how much of a turn were we typically exposed to? Like quarter turn? If it could survive that quarter turn, that was acceptable, right? But what's first contact? What's quarter turn? I think I am used to kind of feeling that, but for a lot of people that didn't grow up with that, developing that feel is unique, and it takes a little bit of time, but it still comes down to that. Now, what I do love is that over time now, it almost feels like it just absolutely bottoms out. I rarely get that quarter turn anymore. It's like, especially with photogrammetry. See, I finally got that word. I didn't have to say it a million times. It's amazing how things can fit. It truly is. Yes, there still will be a residual amount, and part of it's going to be the stretch, the pre-stretch on the screw, but it's all feel. So yeah, I have a pattern to it.
So you do a lot by testing. You explained yourself well about how you want to crisscross and methodology about trying these things in and screwing it in. And I think we're all in agreement with that. We don't go through it sequentially in a clockwise pattern or counterclockwise pattern or whatever. It's evenly trying to set this in to level this onto the implants and then tightening it as we go in. But what's interesting, Frank, what you said is how you're checking fit. Now, checking fit of a porcelain framework versus checking fit of a metal framework, you think it's the same way, but not always. And you're doing it through a lot with touch and feel and bottoming out how the screws are going in. I know that when I started working with ProCeram, with milled restorations or photogrammetry or any of these types of prostheses, you can feel that screw go all the way in and just bottom out. You have something fitting really well. But that doesn't account for soft tissue impingement and other things. What are you doing, Brian? How are you feeling this? And I would love to hear from the audience, others and the other techniques, because this is tricky. No? Am I the only one to feel that?
Brian, say your part, but then I'm going to qualify something.
Okay.
Since you walked into that domain.
Uh-oh.
Interestingly enough,
hearing us around us, huh?
On Monday, I placed mandibular. It was six multi, on 6 multi units, and it was funny because whatever reason I was just playing around with it. I don't know if it was because I knew we were having the webinar, if I was just thinking of something else, but I literally started on one side and started tightening all of them. And when I got to the 5th one, I couldn't get the screw to go in until I loosened all the rest of them and then was able to guide it. So it's one of those things that's kind of funny because it happened to me Monday where I was like, oh, I'll just sequentially do it because it should work. And then I get to the 6th one all the way on the patient's right side and it wouldn't go in. So I had to then loosen the other ones and then it perfectly dropped in. So it's just kind of interesting. It was just enough of when it's just like the car tire. You wouldn't tighten the first one all the way. And not that I torqued it, but it was like I had tightened it enough. So that was kind of interesting. So from the soft tissue part, this patient actually had some soft tissue compression. And that's why I was tightening him as I was going, because I was like, well, I want to get one down so that I can start to press it. And it happened to be the left side was where I had most of that compression. So that's why I started to tighten it, just to try and get the tissue to displace. And so that was the reason. Then I was like, well, I'll just do the next one and the next one. And by the time I got to the sixth one, it wouldn't go in. So then I had to loosen it. But at that point, the tissue had, displaced enough that it wasn't a big deal to loosen the other one. So that was kind of when it had the tissue displacement. That's kind of how I had to do it. But I still had to loosen.
Do you consider that fitting or not fitting?
Well, at the time, when I first did the other 5, I was nervous because when I first put it, I'm like, oh boy, what's wrong here? But literally, it was just a matter of once I loosened the others, it was a perfect fit. It was just that it had been slightly, because if you have like on the 6 multi-units, when you think of it, no metal insert, right? There's a little bit of play there, not huge, but enough that I must have had it to one side just enough. Like I looked in with my mirror and I could see the screw opening, so I was really close. But I was like, why is this? So I then loosened all of them and then put that 6th screw in, and it helped perfectly align it, and it was perfect at that point. And again, when I tested it with the fit, now that the tissue was compressed, it fit very nicely. No like quarter turn or anything. It was just really nice. But it made me nervous. I was sweating a little bit when I got to the 6th one because I'm like,
we all sweat when we do that.
So anyway, it was kind of interesting.
Well,
no matter what, I think we all go through the same thing. We all just kind of cringe when we're trying it in, no matter how many we do.
Yeah.
Well, so let me get into the little to clarify something, because you set up a good example. Typically, we have a provisional in place, correct? And we will, like we spoke about in previous chats, it's like our prototype, and we really want the final to be a copy of that. So we go through great lengths to give the laboratory all the information to do that.
Yes.
Now, you're right. If there's anything to do with the tissue, that's why I look for blanching. Because if I feel resistance, because you'll feel the resistance on that particular unit, and you'll see the tissue blanch. Okay, so then what happens? You're right. Now I have a hard time knowing what is the soft tissue effect versus the actual fit of the prosthesis effect. So some copies are not always perfect. If I don't see any blanching, okay, I'll still tighten everything down. I still go by the feel. But if I see blanching, I leave the patient for a bit. I have everything as much tightened as I can. So blanching, no blanching, I leave the patient. Mm-hmm. I'll still come back. I won't torque everything down. Okay, you're asking about checking fit. Well, you can do as much as you can, do a single screw, whatever, but you better make sure the tissue is not doing a bouncing effect on you, because that will make your heart sink when you think, oh my God, it doesn't fit. So there's clinical judgment in that. But I will come back, loosen every one of them except one, and I'll come back and do the screw down again. And it should just bottom out. So I'll have one holding, unscrew, and I'll just sequentially go. And it looks like I'm going crazy, right? It looks like I'm playing that, game with the cups. Because I will go back and just make sure those screws are bottoming it out. When the blanching is gone, I'll do the same thing, just to make sure that there really isn't a misfit. You understand what I'm getting at?
So there's a question here, Frank, and maybe you can answer this, because the standard is this one screw test. And we typically would, on a metal framework, they're asking, we usually keep the most distal aspect, we place one screw in and screw that in, and then we take radiographs to check the one screw test. How does this change in your perspective? Because you're actually screwing all the screws in. How are you really testing this? That's what this question is. Why What's the disparity of that one screw test versus here you have all 6 screws in?
Okay, so here's where hopefully I clarify, because it's not really a disparity. Number one, we have to remember years ago when we had intra-city presentations, when you and I were there. And
I remember my first one with you. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Oh, yeah. Pleasant time. Okay, so there was a really nice presentation from a UCLA resident about the angulation, the error you could have in imaging for the fit, so that you could actually truly get some sense of idea of where that discrepancy starts developing. At 5 degrees, you start losing. What's 5 degrees in aligning that cone?
Yes.
Okay, so truly, we would have to have a standardized holder so that we can position that cone exactly in order to. So radiographic evaluation, it's possible, but really not 100%. Okay, you really would have to get multiple images of the same abutment in order to try to visualize positioning. Okay, that's my perspective on it. Okay, so radiographic evaluation, especially on a big situation, and implants can be angled in different positions. You try to line up the sensor on an implant that's angled buccolingually like this, that means the cone has to be here. If there's one more vertically oriented, it has to be this way. Okay, and
so
again,
you're not.
If it's the other.
So Frank, you're not using radiographs to confirm?
I use them. I use it. I always use it. I still will use radiographs. Absolutely. However, I can't rely on it alone. So going back to the screws, initially, because we're talking in this case, today's chat, we're talking about a complete arch restoration.
Yes.
I cannot discount the effect of soft tissue, like you brought up. I have to assume there's going to be nuances. If I don't put all screws in place, whether I see the blanching or whatever, if I go to a 1 screw test right away without making sure that prosthesis has been in for whatever period of time makes you happy, and then go to the 1 screw test, because I'll loosen the other screws.
Yes.
But like I said, I will then go back and tighten, loosen in different combinations, because remember this, it can feel good in many ways. Like Brian, you had that tightening. I've had situations in the past, depending how you checked it, certain ones would compensate for discrepancy in another area, depending what order you tighten them.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
it's like
I know. Yes, I do.
In one area,
different changes.
Compressed it. Yeah, it compressed it. And then on adjacent areas, they felt perfect. Whereas you would feel it if you changed which screws you tighten. So I go through all kinds of combinations to just make sure I don't have any of this, oops, wait a minute, this one, really I have to tighten it down more. Okay? And so it's a little trickery. You're right, it was probably a little easier to get away with that, or not get away with it, but feel that when it was metal with acrylic. This zirconia is not forgiving in that way. You can't have it flex. You're not going to have it hide. You'll. But that's the other thing too, because it's so rigid, it won't flex. Right? I mean, with the thickness, it'll feel like it bottoms out. So the typical screw test won't always tell you either if you don't use some imaging. You understand what I'm getting at? Because you're not going to be able to compress it down. Because if you do, you should hear a crack.
Brian, any addition to, do you do something similar, or?
Very simple. For me, I completely agree that like the angle of the radiograph is so hard to be consistent with, that I think it's more of a feel than anything.
Yes.
But I still take radiographs more so to, if it was really off, you'd probably catch it. And two, it becomes your baseline of day of placement. So I do the radiograph before I go and torque it in case I see something very obviously misfit. But again, most of it, I think, is honestly I feel. And then the rest comes just more of as a baseline.
The lack of resistance, just going all the way down with the lack of resistance. I do exactly what you do, Frank. I place them on, settle everything in, take them off, unscrew them back on, and watch for that blanching. And then I will pick one screw or two screws that evenly hold the prosthesis, and I back up all the other ones. So they're barely engaging. Then I take the radiograph just to see if there's anything that it's less tension on it. So, hey, Victor is out there. Victor Rodriguez, friend of all of ours here, an amazing removable technician, some of the best acrylic resin work I've seen. He asked, where is the most common position where a fracture is occurring in the full arch bridge, and why?
Embrasures, right? By the connectors, right?
Embrasures and the connectors.
And then,
Is that what you're
right,
talking
right by the
Frank?
implant, right by the implant of like multi-units normally, right? So,
I guess it really comes more from my conversations with technicians than from my personal experiences, because I try to learn from them, and I kind of, well, if this is happening, why take a chance kind of philosophy. And a lot of it happens around cantilever areas too, the very posterior, because degree of cantilever, that's always been an issue. What's that magic ratio? What can you get away with? And there's issues with cantilevers, and that's why in my mind, unless I have an implant right underneath that molar on a complete a monolithic zirconia, I won't cantilever. I mean, if you're talking cantilever like half a molar kind of cantilever, so to what degree do you consider that a cantilever?
Sure.
But extending, I'm talking about that 1.5, ratio,
the classic
spread.
Metal and resin type of AP spread,
AP
right?
spread. I won't do it.
I won't do it.
Zirconia. No,
but
I
won't
do it if it was anatomic. If something in the treatment plan precluded that posterior support, that's when I go to the metal framework of zirconia superstructure. Before,
Brian, any comment?
I would say
comment about Victor's question here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's cantilevers obviously, but I think when you see it, what you tend to find is it's going to be right around where one of the implants are located, and that especially if that corresponds to an area of like an embrasure space where you've tried, you try to contour some of these to make them look more natural. And if you think of an incisal embrasure, gingival embrasure, if it's that kind of a prosthesis, you can, sometimes that gets finished down to make it look beautiful, but that ends up being a weak point as well. And cantilevers don't help anything because you're increasing the forces. And so I think for me, I like the idea of minimizing cantilevers, or you place implants further posterior, whether that's, I know a lot of people, personally, I don't have experience with it, but, pterygoid implants, people will do to help minimize cantilever. Again, sometimes that creates a large span, but I know a lot of people that do, pterygoid implants to help give you some posterior support to a full arch. So, there's some other ideas too that you can think of.
Ruby, can we have the slides? Can you bring up my slides, please? Because I would love to show this. And that is this photograph here, because this really relates of where it is. This actually fractured right in the center of that multi-unit abutment there.
Yeah.
And there's good thickness around it.
And no cantilever there, so.
And no cantilever.
See, it didn't break on the cantilever.
Yeah.
Just my luck.
But here,
No excuses here. Oh man.
Here is the
Gee,
one.
thanks, guys. I thought you were my friends.
We are. Just imagine if we weren't. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
No, but here's the detail, and I've noticed this a lot with the single unit, especially when I tried to do this screw-mentable single unit restoration, and I would have the abutment in place and then do the crown try-in like on a natural tooth, find that everything is great, and then I go and cement it, and then it comes out tight. I cement it outside the mouth. I don't do it in the mouth. Okay, what's that an example of? A slight shift, because things that we can't see. Okay, now here's the interesting thing. I will have my provisional cementation of that. So I have temp bond inside and try everything in as one unit now. So I thought, oh, this is great. I solved the problem. I put it in, I checked the contacts, pull the mylar through, do all that. How's it feel? Do you feel any pressure? No, this feels great. Guess what? I go and change the cement, and I provisionally cemented it on the cast. Okay, contacts were there. So the same contacts I had for the temporary cement, I had for the final cement. I put it in, I check it again. I did the finger tight, check everything with mylar, felt the same like before. Torque it. Guess what? How come I feel pressure? That few microns when you torque it. There's occasionally, not every time, but sometimes you get that change.
Yeah.
And it's not because there's bone impingement somewhere and something wasn't seating and all that. I don't know if that's happened for you. And that's the only reason I bring it up is when we do the finger tight, then we torque it.
Sure.
Now we have the potential of doing some real microscopic level inducing stresses.
So there's some really good questions here and comments about what you're just saying, because one of the comments, one I asked is anybody else fractured, so I'll state that. But before I state that, I'll reach out to Victor because he asked a really good question. Should the full arch bridge be fabricated with tie-based cylinders cemented in a bridge or milled directly to zirconia? Victor, we're going to talk about that at our next clinical chat. So hang on to that. Come on to our next clinical chat in April, and we will answer that question. And if you want to answer sooner, give one of three of us a call, and we'll answer that. But this doctor says, and I'll make this one anonymous, she writes, I had one fracture. The patient wore it for a year. They had a hygiene appointment with the periodontist. The periodontist removed it, cleaned it, and then put it back in. At that time, the patient felt pain, heard a crack, and ultimately she lost the distal implant where the fracture was. I'm wondering what happened. A lot of things come up to mind for me with that scenario. Brian, Frank, anybody want to make a comment about that?
Did I hear right? Lost the implant?
Lost the implant too. Yeah. The distal implant.
Because the restoration, following the removal of the restoration and the cleaning.
And this brings up a whole separate point that I really want to talk about. Okay, it breaks, something fails. That's over a year out. Who pays for all this? Yeah. Because these restorations are not inexpensive.
No.
They, as I used to describe, they were one of these and one a leg and an arm and a leg.
Come on, Chris, stand up and give us that demo. It's an arm.
Hey, this is a clean show. I can't do that.
Oh, I don't know where your mind is at. I just said leg.
I've got shorts on. I'm no.
Oh, there you go.
No, but truly, this becomes a point of who pays for all this. In that scenario with this doctor, question is, why did the periodontist take it off for?
Yeah.
Well,
to have a hygiene appointment.
That brings up a professional problem, because it turns out you break it, you bought it. And in my practice, the patient comes to me, I remove it, I inspect it, I lightly, I don't torque it back, I lightly screw it back. So the only thing that the periodontist in this case would gently unscrew it, and the patient comes back to me for the final placement. There's nothing that anybody needs to do of torquing or anything, because that'll be on me. So that's how I get around that particular problem, because now that's a sticky one.
That is.
But I have to tell you, there's something a little unusual in the scenario why an implant would be lost. I could understand the prosthesis fracturing because of misplacement and trying to force it down, or if the implant, I can't even imagine that the interface would have been negatively affected. But to me, it just seems like there's something more at play here, that an implant would be lost unless
it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, unless there was something cross-threaded, something was irreversibly, and no one that specializes in removing these problem components, and fixing these fixture problems could handle. And I could see maybe losing the implant like that. Maybe that's what the comment is, not so much because of bone loss. I can't imagine that the implant had catastrophic bone loss because of this. Or the implant was loosened because of it.
You would think that would be caught at the recall exam, right? So it's interesting that would be after they took it off and put it back. So that's what's kind of interesting. And then be interesting to know where it broke, because was it right around where the implant was lost, which would be what you'd expect, because now it's lost some support from that, from that one implant. So again, there's a lot that could be at play there. Yeah.
Which comes into the next question here. What is your protocol when seating the final prosthesis and one of the screws is not seating or is torquing passively? What do you do?
Then you're going back to your impression. Unfortunately, that's where you're at. Whether it's analog or digital, actually at that point, if you have an analog model, you can at least know that it probably verify again that it fits on that. When it's an analog or digital fashion, you don't even have a model to put it on. So at that point, you're back to either way, you're starting over with a new impression, whichever way you're going.
I think that's why it's so critical to have verified casts. You need to have that verified cast that we've talked about. That becomes crucial. But when it doesn't fit, at least at this point in time, it's still under the laboratory working with you. Versus the other scenario, the laboratory is done.
A year later, it's a different dynamic. Yeah.
And who pays for it? What are you guys doing?
Well,
I want to hear from you guys.
Well, here's the thing. Even though I may have had complications in other aspects, repairing, not on zirconia per se, but when it came to like crowns or what have you, if there was a complication, and let's say I've had a single unit from internal relief seem to fit, real well, or zirconia crown, but when I asked the patient to bite, is that minuscule additional seating that you can't really visualize, but it was enough to cause a vertical crack on the crown, starting from the margin up. Well, there's no question at that point that the lab redoes it. They're not going to question, oh, it was your scan. They worked with me, right? They typically will work with you. And I've had a zirconia crown break. What was it? Like one of the rare ones. It actually, in the second molar, a patient managed to crack it after 3 years. I was actually expecting the lab to give me a little resistance. Like, oh, wait a minute, it's been in there for 3 years. You know, I can't explain why. The thickness is enough, but, you know, they didn't even fight it. They worked with me. Did I charge the patient? Not a penny. So it's kind of like, that's why these decisions on how you want to do it, I think it's truly, honestly, other than minor complications, I'll still do acrylic, a hybrid today. I'll still do it. I don't have anything against it, truly. You know, if a person is compliant and using an occlusal guard, it's amazing how long they can last. Sure. I have them followed for more than 20 years and I didn't have to retread. Yes, there was wear, but not to the point where I had to worry about it. And there's another chat and how you could deal with that. My point is this. It's the fit. It's the fit. To me, everything is the fit. Okay, a bruxer. That's a complication. They could probably annihilate just about anything.
Anything.
Okay. And so with that, I'm going to look for what is possibly the strongest and the quickest way out of a problem. And that's where, in that kind of scenario, what's easier to deal with? And Brian, this is where one of those situations where that metal framework, the substructure, is kind of a godsend, because at least the part that goes directly to the implants, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Sure.
I just need to now worry what was the potential reason for something to break. Now, fortunately, that hasn't happened to me yet, but then when you talk about digital dentistry, you remill that. Could you possibly modify the VDO a hair, okay, and increase the thickness if you thought that that superstructure was a little thin, given the forces coming on it? You might investigate it. Maybe you put a provisional back, and you're right, who pays for all this? But you're trying not to get a repeat of history, because it's one thing who pays for it, because nobody is going to compensate us for our clinical time. You know, you hear so much about warranties, but what do? They'll replace components and all that, but I have yet to see somebody pay me for my clinical time. Sure. And so that's us. That's on us. And that's why this chat to me is ever so important, because it's trying to avoid these problems.
How about you, Brian?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the same thing where, I mean, you stand behind what you do, right? We want to do that, but it becomes a tough decision when it's like 5, 7, 10, 50, you know, it's like when this happened, like, where do you draw that line? And I think that's a part that's really kind of going to be each their own. And I think the other part that's important is that, like you mentioned, Frank, that relationship with your lab, it's kind of a team thing where, you know, you stand up for them, they stand up for you. And I think that's so important. You know, I know, again, it depends on the scenario, but I know you can get warrant, you know, I know, for example, Nobel on their prosthetics, like, especially from a certain date on, basically but you get 10 years of a warranty for the zirconia. So, you know, from that perspective, that's great to know if it's, you know, if there is a warranty, because that can go into at least knowing that the cost to remake whatever was made is not going to be as much. But as you mentioned, there's the technician's time to finish and the chair time. So again, at that point, you got to see what decision works. And that, again, you have to talk with your technician and figure out, do you charge or not? And you have to figure out, you know, I think the hard part here is a lot of times we take those things and think that it's our fault, but if it was 5 years after you purchased a car and it needs a new engine, if it's out of warranty, it's, and depending what it is, it's not like that's covered either. So I think it's kind of interesting that in different areas of life, we expect things, but in the medical field, they don't have warranties on, hip replacements and things like that. It's, they replace it, but there's a charge. So it's kind of interesting when you think of it in different realms. But dentistry, I think we tend to bear a lot of that ourselves.
Well, if I could ask you both this. Okay, Chris, you had this scenario, and Brian, imagine this is yours.
It's a matter of time. Eventually I will. I'm sure.
Well, no. Listen, it's for all of us. You live long enough.
Yeah.
And we're always pushing.
We all go through it.
Right? I mean, that's the
Absolutely.
pleasure of doing what we do. Okay.
That's why we're chatting about this.
Listen, Chris, you learn more from this one than the other 50 that were successful. I can bet on that.
As well as I share this, and that's why I want to share my experiences with it, share it with you and what we do.
So here's the question I have for you, because it's one thing if we absorb the cost that the laboratory, the manufacturer, helps us with a new prosthesis. But my question is, would you put an absolute copy of this? I mean, replace it with an absolute copy.
So I didn't.
So what? So you what?
I did not put it. I did not do an exact replica of this.
Okay, so
because my concern was why I did a fracture, right?
Yeah,
that's exactly.
And that's why I learned about. Is it going to fracture? And I kind of determined that it had to deal with mandibular flexure. Mm-hmm. And we kind of brought that up at our last chat in episode 50 about mandibular flexure. Mm-hmm. And in between that time and actually my presentation at Invista, I did a little research. And I looked up all these things about mandibular flexure and prostheses. And there's actually a few articles about not just measuring it, expect it. How do you prevent it? Well, try to make the diagnosis of the mandibular flexure before you actually design the prosthesis. But when I see something like this, because where it fractured, and to go back to Victor's question, it's going to be fracturing either in a few places. Typically it's in the mandible.
Yeah.
Typically in the center somewhere of the mandible, or anywhere between foramen and foramen. Yeah. So in the articles, it describes, well, what do you do? And it describes either breaking up the prosthesis into 2 pieces or breaking up the prostheses into 3 pieces. Mm-hmm. And so in this situation, because of where the implants were located, I created a small cantilever of 1 incisor and then made it 2. But I showed another case where I broke it up into 3 because of where we can locate, because of where the implants were located.
But that's where you would need at least 6 implants to make that feasible.
Correct.
So, it's kind of tough if it's already healed, ready to go years down the road. But.
And that's not where an all-on-4 would work very well.
Yeah, there is an interesting, I've seen people do this, and there's a recently, and I wish I could remember exactly the article, but it was either in the Journal of Prosthetic Dentistry or Journal of Prosthodontics. But there was a video that they posted about, which was really interesting, where they created a jig out of, I believe it was a dental stone that was connected. Mm-hmm. They placed it in the mouth, then had the patient open wide. And It's interesting when you see the video, you can actually see the crack and see that when they open wide versus close, it opened and closed. Now, it's not like by millimeters, but you can see the gap get larger and smaller. And so, it is interesting to think about it. I can't say, again, yet I've seen that as a major problem, but it shows it exists. And so you really wonder what role that plays. Yeah.
And the article is in the Journal of Prosthetic Dentistry. It was in 2023. If somebody wants to see and read that article, I have the reference, but it is last year. Yeah. And because it doesn't happen all the time. I think I shared between my father and I, we have 60 of these types of prostheses. He has one fracture, I have two. And so would I make all of them separate and break them apart? The answer is no, I don't. But this does happen. What's interesting is neither one of you asked me about what our policy is, and I'll share what our policy is because we had to do something here, right?
Yeah, of course.
So my father.
When did this happen? Like, how many years out did this happen?
That's a really good question. It never happens the first year out. No, it never happens the first year out. It happens.
It takes time.
It takes time.
It's
This
like
happens.
wine. It gets better over time.
Oh, yeah. It happens in years. It typically happens around year 3. I remember in the literature.
Magic time.
Yeah. Do you remember there was an article? I can't remember the issues and problems of implant prostheses. You know, the highest implant failure is within the first year. And it's usually because of surgical errors or problems. And then all the way out to year 7 and 9. And it fluctuates with the problems. I can't remember what the reference is on that, but there was a different reference. But this happens typically after year 2 and through year 5. Okay. And the 2 that broke for me was in that time span. Okay. And I try to diagnose the patient before designing the prosthesis. So there's a couple of patients that I went straight to a 2 or 3 segmented cases, but the vast majority are all one piece. Yeah. And my father and I came up with we can't guarantee anything, but we can have warranties. And so we call it a ceramic policy. And it goes back, Frank, if you remember back in our programs when we had to do treatment letters, there was always this policy. And I remember Alex Coper made us write into it, and Jack Preston used to make it right into it that guarantees are not possible because we're all human and biologic. But if there's a problem that we did, any teeth that we restored in the first year, we'll take care of it 100%. So that's in our policy. And after that, my father and I came up with our bumper to bumper warranty. And that is, and the way that we describe it is this: if there is a problem in the first year, we'll take care of 100%. In year 2, we will cover 80% of the fee.
Yeah.
You will cover 20%. Year 3, we will cover 70%. You'll cover 30%. Yeah. Year 4, year 5. After year 5, that 50-50, we think that you're responsible. Mm-hmm. We have it written, and that comes into play with just like cars, because when you have a problem, Frank, as you just said, they're still charging you. There might be a warranty thing, but the rest of it, they take care of whatever is possible, but not everything. Yeah. Right. So that's what we do.
I like that.
That's sliding scale proration. That's how I have it structured. I admit on certain complications going back, like if something chipped or if I had something that wasn't a catastrophic replacement. I mean, I get a little too humanistic on times because they say, "Oh my God, I forgot." I bit on a rib and I chipped this. Okay, I helped them out. But when they tell me, look, I bit down on an olive pit, and they seem to do it repeatedly, then they used up their warranty. And then, there goes to a modest fee. Because again, it's a relationship. You're right. These people invested a lot, but if it's something significant like this that requires a lot of your time, and this is assuming that the laboratory, whoever was the originator of the restoration, works with you. Yeah, the sliding scale, I think, is very fair, because at least you're not absorbing all the lab costs.
And we describe it at the very beginning. We talk about that at the very beginning in that disclosure. I always believe, disclose everything up at front. So I can't believe the whole hour came up so quickly here. This was an incredible chat. There's some other questions and we didn't get to. So if you write into us, I'm happy to answer them. Luis, for instance, Luis Miento, if you write into your question, either Frank, Brian, or myself will answer the question to you, but we just need to have your email address and we can go forward with that. If you would like to, for us to talk about your case, if you want to present a case to us and have us talk about what would you do and have us chat, we're happy to do that. Please submit your topic to us. And there's other avenues when you register about submitting your topic. So please send that, and that's at drchris@club32.com. Thank you to my two dear friends, Brian, Frank. It's always an honor and privilege to have you both with us. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge, and most of all, your friendship. Our next clinical chat is on Wednesday, April 10th. And Victor, this is where this comes up, even though this is just one implant, but it applies to those also with multiple implants. Our next episode is on Wednesday, April 10th, the second Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Our next chat, we're going to discuss the issue of what happened here and what would you do with this single implant. So with my utmost enthusiasm, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you, our beloved fans, our viewers, to creating beautiful smiles that make the world a brighter place. Stay well, my friends, and until we meet again, thank you all. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.